Can't wait to do this. That's a blizzard. Welcome back, everybody. As you can see, we've got a ton of snow again. This is actually Thursday, and we got all this snow on Tuesday night. So it's already been here for a whole day. Yesterday, our high was only in the low 20s, so it was very cold. And then it got down to -6. Actually, I think it was more like -7, -8. Murphy's Law would have it that on that coldest night of the year so far, this diesel heater quit working. I got up this morning and I looked at the temperature of the basement and it was in the low 20s. And I was like, what is going on here? So I probably should have come out here and looked at the little screen to verify if there were any trouble codes or anything for why it shut off. But instead, it was below zero outside. I hit the button on the remote and started it again. And I could hear that it was not making the sound that it makes when it fires, but I could hear the diesel pump thumping. I could hear the pump pumping, so it was getting fuel. So I came out here to look, and indeed, it's getting fuel, but it's not firing. So I looked at the screen, there's no trouble codes whatsoever, and then it proceeded to shut itself off again. So then I started it again and came out here, and once again, there were no trouble codes. It was showing that everything was working. I heard the diesel pump still thumping. I put my nose down here in front of this exhaust and I could smell unburned diesel. So it definitely wasn't burning. I don't know why. Like I said, there were no trouble codes. So I did the thing I have to do immediately, which is get the basement warmer because all my plumbing is frozen. So I got my electric heater set back up and fired up the generator. But there's a little bit of a story there. Murphy's Law says that, whatever's going to go wrong usually does, and usually it's more than one. And in this case, we had 3 things go wrong. So number 1, the diesel heater failed last night, and I'm still not sure why. Number 2, we had problems with the generator last night. It was surging and it kept shutting off. It was acting like it was starved for fuel, and I think I know why. I think it actually was. So I pressed the off button and I thought I had shut the generator off. I put my head out the window and I listened and I couldn't hear anything, but then again, all I could hear was a blizzard. So about 20 minutes later, I went and looked at my battery monitor to verify that the voltage had dropped from the charge voltage down to normal voltage, and I looked and it was at 13.4. So I figured, okay, good. It had dropped. It was off. Well, turns out it wasn't off. Turns out it was still on and it had gone into float mode, which was 13.4. So what happened is I got up later that night at 2 a.m. to let it scout out to go to the bathroom, and I could hear it running still, and I couldn't believe it. It had run for a full 14 hours. So I went out and shut it off, and then of course filled it with gas the next morning, and then we ran it the next evening, and it immediately started having problems and surging. Well, I think it, running the fuel down that low in the tank made it start to have problems, fuel clogging problems, which does happen. This morning I just fired it up on a whim and a prayer, hoping that it would take being throttled up and it wouldn't die, and luckily for me it did, and I was able to run my electric heater in there. When I ran my electric heater in here, the heater had been running in here for almost an hour, and I drove to the gas station to go get fuel. I drove to go get gasoline and diesel and more propane. And so I told Sue, when the temperature of the basement shows 38 degrees, go ahead and turn on the water pump. Well, she did, and bam, the water pump didn't work at all. I mean, it didn't make a sound. You clicked the button and it made the lights dim. It hadn't thrown a breaker, but it just was not working at all. And I pretty much was convinced that it had, it was burned up. I wasn't here when she turned it on, and it probably wasn't the smartest idea to do that before I, verified that it for sure, was thought out and everything. So needless to say, came out here, I fired up the electric heater again. I turned it on high. So I had this electric heater sitting 12 inches away. Okay. And I had it on high. It took 2.5 hours before that pump thawed out. That's how frozen it was. I couldn't believe that. So luckily the pump works again. But, I realized that if that pump had burned up, it still would take me 2 or 3 days to get another one. And out here in these conditions, I need water. We've ordered another pump to just have one here as a backup. This is the second pump I've put in the RV. They do burn up. It does happen. So I'm getting another pump here as a backup. A couple of friends of mine and several of our good viewers in the comments have recommended a brand called Vivor. Okay, so I went ahead and bought a replacement one of these as a backup. I bought a Vivor. Oddly enough, this piece of crap, when I got back after running all those errands and after ordering the new one and getting it already coming from Amazon and everything, I tried this thing for the 5th time. I'll be damned, suddenly it works. Also, it is now putting off a little bit of a diesel smell through the ductwork, okay, which means that, like it or not, the combustion air is getting into the inside air. It's getting into the heated air, okay? Those two are never supposed to mix, okay? When that happens with a real furnace, we replace them, we throw them away. So just so you guys know how much this has been used, okay? I've been using it now for over 3 weeks, okay? I've only burned 7 gallons of diesel so far, total. And it's already failed. Think about that. I've only burned 7 gallons of diesel and it's already failed. I'll go ahead and tell everybody out there now what the brand name of this is so you can stay away from it, okay? This was made by a company called Fiberfly. So stay absolutely clear of them. And I'll tell you that when I got this, you want to know why I chose this one? This was Amazon's #1 pick, and that's why I chose it. So when I get the Vivor, since I've had such rave reviews about it from my friends, I'm going to just replace it for this one. I should be able to use some of the same stuff. The installation won't take me as long. And then if this thing still works, I'll keep it as a backup, but I'll probably end up buying a second Vivor as a backup, because if, let's say that diesel heater absolutely had failed and I got 2, let's just hypothetically say I had 2 or 3 more nights of below zero, I would be screwed. It's very hard to heat this basement when it's that cold with electric heaters. And then I'm looking at running the generator 24 hours a day. Luckily, the problem with the water pump worked itself out and the pump works again. And I'll tell you, if you guys have a SureFlow water pump, I mean, that thing froze solid. Never wanted, that's the whole reason why I heat my basement. I never wanted to put my equipment through that. So I got a brand new water pump coming, and I'll have a brand new one. And so that if it ever does fail, I can literally swap it out in about 5 minutes. This generator now, we've been using it for 1.5 years. And because we used this a lot before we had our new batteries, and we had to use it a lot for charging and a lot last winter running it for heat in the basement, this generator has 2,500 hours on it now in 1.5 years. And we've never put that many hours on any generator we have ever had. I mean, that is about double what we've ever done before. Our onboard generator made it 1,300 hours and blew up literally. And that's after spending, I don't know, about $1,600 into it since we've owned the RV, and it ended up blowing up. Total waste of money. Every cent I ever spent on that own generator was a complete waste of money. So now I have an onboard generator that doesn't even work. I bought that Arxen generator. Same thing. We got about 1,400 hours on it, and it took a crap. So this thing, once we hit 2,000 hours, me and Sue were nervous. I mean, we've never had a generator go that long. And I got to be honest, guys, this thing has been almost flawless. It has just worked really well. Now, I had to replace the lithium battery. The lithium battery quit working. I think the lithium battery got wore out because it had to endure all that cold weather, last winter. And then once it got cold this year, lithium batteries don't do well when they get into really cold. And basically it took a crap. When we had the first below zeros, I think it was in December, And so when it took a crap, I just hot wired it to a large car battery that I already had, and that seems to be working good. So one last thing about this whole deal that has happened with the diesel heater. I finally, through some extensive detective work, I figured out what was wrong. I don't think that the heater was actually broken. I think what happened is the diesel fuel that I was using froze. Apparently, you can't have diesel fuel outside in the cold. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying, well, duh. Well, first of all, I've never owned anything that uses diesel, ever, okay? And the instructions with that piece of crap heater didn't say one word. And I did my due diligence, people. I watched a number of install videos on YouTube. Nobody ever talked about diesel fuel freezing, or that you're going to need to keep that tank with that heater inside. So that means if I had have installed that diesel heater inside my RV, I would have had to put the diesel tank in there too? No. Use me as an example. It doesn't matter how well you're prepared, even when you have backups, you know, your all of your primary systems can fail all at once. And you may need to depend on all of your backups all at once. When you're out here in these type of conditions off grid, you know, you don't want to just depend on one thing. So, you know, out there, use this, everybody, as a lesson. You know, I definitely did. Like I said, I already had a backup here for my generator, because see, the generator also is a great, my generator is my main backup for everything, right? If my propane heat quits, I have electric heat. If my diesel heater quits, I have electric heat, right? But I have to make sure that the generator works too. So that's why I have this, to make sure that I'm covered. Plus, this should take care, now that I have much reduced generator use, this should take care of my generator needs, I'd say, for the next 4 years, maybe 5 years. Murphy's Law says what can go wrong will go wrong. And typically, it's not going to be one, it's going to be three. Everything usually comes in threes. I don't know why. Also, I'd like to thank everybody for commenting on the video where I'm talking about the roads. Just so that everybody knows, I have said this before in many, many videos, but I'll go ahead and reiterate it, because it seems like quite a few people had a misconception about the whole thing. First off, all the roads out here are not county roads, meaning they all are on somebody's private property, okay? But all of the roads that were out here and marked on the maps, when all these were divided up into lots, before they actually all sold, when they became addresses, okay, those roads, from what I understand, have an easement of use for the residents out here only. Now, most of the road that's out front of our property is on the property across the street. But about 2 feet of it goes on my property, and about 2 foot of the road goes on part of Aj's property. So my neighbors are just using a road that, you know, they have every right to use if it's open. I mean, that's how all the roads are out here. They're just using it when the conditions get really bad. It just sucks that my road has become a shortcut when all the rest of the roads that are normally used are in really, really bad condition. Then they come and use the roads here, you know, the road here. So I hope that clears it up a little bit for everybody. It just, we happen to be on a road that is really, it's not what you would call a through road. It's not a road that anybody ever normally uses, okay? Unless the road they normally use is super, super messed up. And then our road becomes the only option. And just so everybody knows, I had already been planning on putting up a fence this spring when everybody came back. I had been planning on that since the end of last summer. I knew I had to save a little bit more money, and I knew I needed to get the battery project done first, and then I'll worry about doing the fence. We're gonna do barbed wire. I didn't get it up in time. I had no idea that there was going to be a situation where suddenly the road would be completely destroyed, and there'd be a possibility that that destruction would then make it onto my racetrack. 3 weeks ago, that wasn't even a thought. Okay, this wasn't taking place yet. Me and Scout are out on an early morning hunt. together, we got a bunny rabbit the other day, so she's really, really excited about hunting now. We definitely have an overpopulation of rabbits out here right now. And you definitely have to control the population or disease sets in quickly. And we're gonna have quite the spring. But look at this. Look at this beautiful sunrise. Look at this. It's so gorgeous out here. When we control the population, when I have extra things like dead mice, dead pack rats, dead rabbits, I leave them out. And I didn't film it, but I put out a rabbit the other day, and I specifically were waiting to see what the ravens were going to do. And the ravens, indeed, they swoop down and they eat the whole thing. And I can tell the ravens, they're smart animals. They're supposed to have the intelligence of a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old child. They know who I am. They remember me. And when I leave things out for them, they come for them within an hour or two. So I don't mind. I'll tell you what, anytime I've left something dead out, it's always gone the next morning. There is an aggressive food cycle out here. So if I kill a rabbit, it's in another animal's belly, usually in less than 12 hours. So everything has a life cycle out here. Nothing goes to waste. So I'm going to try really hard, guys, we have a red-tailed hawk out here. I'm going to try really hard to get him on film. He's a tough one. You know, by the time I get the camera ready, he flies away every time, but he's twice the size of the ravens and just absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to try really hard. Let's go. Where's the bunny? Huh? Where's the bunny? Go find the bunny. Go find the bunny. Go on, go find the bunny. Go find a bunny. Good girl. Yeah. Go find a bunny. Come on. Let's go get the bunny. This dog loves to hunt. That's all she cares about now. If I even say the word hunt inside the RV, she goes crazy. Goes to the door. If I touch my boots, if I touch the... Here we go. Coyotes. They're howling at me in Scout. We were just up on the road. Sounds like they're about a half mile away. That could be a decoy too. It's hard to tell. They're too far away to be at my closest neighbor. My closest neighbor is almost 2 miles from here. That's why I have this gun. But I was just out filming on the road and they could hear me talking. And I'm sure they can see Scout. There's some spots on the property next to us where they can see us from almost a 1/4 mile. Yep, here they go.